U.S. President Donald Trump has extended his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, saying Washington will hold off striking power plants in the country for 5 days. He also said talks between the U.S. and Iran have seen progress, but Iranian officials denied there were negotiations. President Lee Jae-myung convened a cabinet meeting this morning, calling on officials to establish an emergency response system in response to conflict in the Middle East. He also vowed to take a hard line against price collusion and urged efforts to reduce the use of private vehicles on workdays. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has formally labeled South Korea the most hostile state and said the regime's status as a nuclear weapon state will never change, vowing continued efforts to confront what he described as hostile forces. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today with the latest on the conflict in the Middle East. The 48-hour countdown for threatened military strikes by the U.S. against Iran's energy infrastructure is on hold. President Donald Trump has ordered a 5-day suspension, citing preliminary negotiations with Tehran aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict. Iranian officials, however, denied that any talks are taking place. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced a sudden shift in military plans against Tehran on Monday, saying that talks between the U.S. and Iran have seen progress. While Iran denied that discussions had taken place, President Trump ordered a 5-day postponement of threatened attacks targeting Iranian energy infrastructure. Trump had given Iran 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face attacks on its power plants, but has shifted his stance as that deadline approaches.
I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal, and so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
The U.S. leader indicated that initial contact could pave the way for a permanent resolution to the ongoing conflict and address Washington's core demands.
So we are now having really good discussions. They started last night, a little bit, the night before that. And I think they're very good. They want peace. They've agreed they will not have a nuclear weapon.
The suspension is being closely watched by U.S. allies in the region. After a call with President Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that any diplomatic outcome must secure his country's strategic goals.
President Trump believes there is a possibility to leveraging the mighty achievements obtained by the IDF and the U.S. military in order to realize the goals of the war in a deal that will preserve our vital interests.
Tehran, however, remains firm that Trump's claims are fake news, with officials accusing Washington of fabricating the talks to buy time. The Iranian military also dismissed Western intelligence reports about the deployment of explosives in regional waterways and reaffirmed its control of the Strait of Hormuz.
Given this level of control and capability, there is no need to lay mines in the Persian Gulf. However, if necessary, we will use all available means to ensure security.
With the 5-day suspension now in effect, Washington's deadline for a negotiated resolution has been extended to this Saturday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And stocks rose and oil prices plunged after U.S. President Donald Trump said further strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure will be postponed pending negotiations. The Dow Jones Industrial Average on Monday climbed 631 points, or 1.38%, while the S&P 500 gained 1.15% and the Nasdaq rose 1.38%. The rebound helped halt a recent market slide, with the Nasdaq having closed near correction territory Friday. In energy markets, Brent crude fell nearly 11% to settle at $99.94 per barrel, its first close below $100 since March 11th. U.S. crude dropped more than 10% to $88.13 per barrel, after prices had hit their highest level since July 2022 on Friday. On the local front, President Lee Jae-myung has called on his officials to establish an emergency response system to deal with the fallout from the war in the Middle East. During Tuesday's cabinet meeting, he said that the government will update the fuel price cap rule and announce it later this week. The president also vowed to strongly punish any attempts of price collusion, adding that the prosecution has launched investigations into oil refiners. He also urged for a reduction in private vehicle use on workdays and said that public institutions will adopt a system limiting use based on the last digit of license plate numbers. South Korea's producer prices increased for the 6th consecutive month in February, driven primarily by rising global oil prices. The Bank of Korea said this morning that the producer price index for February stood at 123.25. This represents a 0.6% increase from the previous month and a 2.4% jump from a year earlier. The central bank attributes this increase to rising global crude oil prices, which rose by more than 10% in February compared to January. Consequently, domestic coal and petroleum products rose 4.0% overall. Specifically, prices for diesel and naphtha spiked 7.4% and 8.7% respectively. Financial and insurance activities also surged 5.2%, largely due to higher stock brokerage commissions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has declared South Korea the regime's most hostile state, warning of harsh retaliation if Pyongyang is provoked. The remarks came as Russia's Vladimir Putin congratulated Kim on his re-election, signaling deepening ties between Moscow and Pyongyang. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has formally labeled South Korea the most hostile state and warned of merciless consequences if Pyongyang is provoked. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, Kim made the remarks on the final day of the first session of the Supreme People's Assembly, declaring that Seoul has now been officially designated as North Korea's principal adversary. He warned that South Korea would pay the price for any provocation and reaffirmed that North Korea's status as a nuclear weapons state will never change, vowing continued efforts to confront what he described as hostile forces. The comments came as Kim secured a third consecutive term as chairman of the State Affairs Commission, the country's top policy guidance body created in 2016. His re-election was confirmed during the parliamentary session held on Sunday. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Kim on his re-election and expressed hope for deeper cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang. In a message released by the Kremlin on Monday, Putin praised Kim's role in strengthening what he called a friendly and allied relationship between the two countries, adding that continued collaboration would serve their fundamental national interests. Ties between Russia and North Korea have strengthened in recent years. The two countries signed a mutual defense treaty in 2024, and North Korea has sent troops to support Russia's war effort in Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said Kim has a standing invitation to visit Russia, noting that Moscow would welcome him once diplomatic channels finalize the timing. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung chaired a high-level defense meeting on Monday and called for stronger defense capabilities as geopolitical uncertainty continues to grow. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung has again underscored the importance of strong self-reliant defense capabilities.
그리고 이 국방은 누구에게도 맡겨서는 안 될 우리 스스로가 완벽하게 최종적으로 책임져야 될 핵심입니다. 우리가 어떤 상황이 처하더라도 누구의 도움도 받지 않고 스스로.
Lee presided over the first Central Integrated Defense Council meeting of his administration at the Blue House on Monday. The council convenes officials from the government, the military, and the civilian sector to assess the country's defense readiness and review key policy outcomes. Under South Korean law, it must meet at least once a year. There, President Lee described self-reliant defense as the key to South Korea's defense system, citing an, quote, increasingly complex and rapidly changing geopolitical environment.
민, 관, 군, 경, 소방 등 모든 방위 요소가 유사시에 한몸처럼 일사불란하게 대응할 수 있어야 국가와 국민을 지켜낼 수 있습니다.
He called for being better prepared so the country can defend itself under any circumstances, but while also expressing confidence in South Korea's capabilities. Lee noted that the country's annual defense spending is about 1.4 times North Korea's GDP and that its military strength ranks 5th in the world. The president's remarks come as calls for a stronger self-reliant defense have grown recently, especially after reports that some U.S. forces' Korea assets could be deployed to the Middle East in response to the U.S. war in Iran.
국제 질서의 영향에 따라서 외부의 지원이 없어질 경우, 우리의 뜻과 다르게, 우리의 의지와 다르게, 그럴 경우는 얼마든지 발생할 수 있죠.
Also, the Pentagon's latest national defense strategy states that, quote, South Korea is capable of taking primary responsibility for deterring North Korea with critical but more limited U.S. support. The fact that President Lee personally chaired the meeting, typically led by the Prime Minister, highlights his focus on strengthening an integrated defense system. As the situation in the Middle East continues and inter-Korean relations remain strained. 송미진, Arirang News.
Historical drama The King's Warden has topped Korea's all-time box office revenue. As of Monday, the movie had made a total of 142.5 billion Korean won, or $94.6 million US dollars. The film attracted over 800,000 moviegoers nationwide over the weekend, holding on to the #1 spot for 7 consecutive weeks and bringing its total admissions to 14.75 million viewers. It now ranks 3rd on Korea's box office chart, behind The Admiral, Roaring Currents, and Extreme Job. The King's Warden is the first 10 million viewer hit for director Jang Hang-jun. It tells the story of the exile of the young King Tanjong during the Joseon Dynasty. On the retail front, BTS fans are fueling remarkable domestic consumption with their purchase of K-pop related products. Our Kim Junong takes a look.
These are characters inspired by BTS members, items that targeted fans visiting Seoul for the concert. Shelves filled with merchandise featuring their photos and names. This is K-Wave, a K-pop specialty store inside a duty-free shop in Myeongdong, one of Seoul's busiest shopping districts.
Items like magnets and puzzles kept selling out, even after repeated restocking. We've also seen a more diverse mix of customers, with more visitors from outside Asia, and the impact extended beyond our K-pop booth to nearby food and fashion sections.
Since early in the morning, fans have been coming in, eager to connect with their favorite artists.
I came to Korea for the free BTS concert. There are many places selling merchandise in Myeongdong, but I prefer this store because it's well organized and has official goods.
Dedicated entirely to K-pop merchandise, stores like this are becoming major destinations for fans visiting Korea. And the impact is visible in the numbers, with a sharp increase in visitors ahead of the concert. Foreign shopper numbers at the duty-free shop rose 32% from a week earlier, while BTS merchandise sales at a K-pop specialty store increased more than 5-fold. The impact reached beyond duty-free shops, with spending spilling over into the broader retail sector. At one convenience store chain, sales at 10 outlets near Gwanghwamun nearly quadrupled compared to the same days a week earlier. Stores located closer to the concert venue saw an even sharper increase, with sales jumping more than 6 times. This surge across the retail sector underscores the distinctive nature of fan-driven consumption.
Fan-driven spending is typically more intense, reflecting a stronger interest in Korea than that of general consumers. This demand is also spreading beyond BTS to other products with distinct Korean elements. If the trend continues, it could spread to general overseas travelers through social media, supporting long-term positive spillovers.
ARMY-nomics is now visible in the data, showing how a cultural phenomenon is translating into a tangible economic impact. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
In a city in Gyeonggi-do Province, autonomous buses have begun navigating the streets without drivers touching the wheel. Our Cha Yun-kyung tells us more.
Inside a bus navigating downtown, the steering wheel turns on its own without a driver touching it. The vehicle even executes right turns in sync with traffic signals. This is a level 3 self-driving bus, where a human driver intervenes only during emergencies. Currently, these buses operate during the day and late at night in areas with limited public transit access. Since its launch in April last year, approximately 25,000 passengers have used the service.
Here's the number 5 bus that goes to Bumgay Station. But this one is much faster. So, unless it's a Monday, I take this bus almost every day.
Anyang City has also introduced a level 4 autonomous shuttle. A striking feature of this vehicle is the complete absence of a driver's seat and side mirrors. To give the public a hands-on experience, the shuttle operates 3 round trips daily along a 3-kilometer designated route.
We believe that the success of autonomous driving in Korea depends on the stable integration of this system. Therefore, the role of local governments is absolutely crucial.
Anyang City plans to reduce dispatch intervals and expand the routes into densely populated residential areas. As cities like Seongnam and Suwon also introduce autonomous vehicles, the technological competition among local governments is heating up. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
This is the world now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. A new report released on Monday shows that the timing of joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th was changed by newly surfaced intelligence. According to Reuters, a meeting between Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and top military officials at his Tehran compound was moved from the night of the 28th to the morning, narrowing an already fragile window for a potential decapitation strike. That shift set off an urgent call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump had already approved the strike against Iran in principle, but was still debating the timing. Netanyahu pressed that the moment might never return, with intelligence now showing Iran's leadership in one place. Trump ultimately made the call that triggered Operation Epic Fury and killed Khamenei. In the U.S., a passenger jet landing at New York's LaGuardia airport crashed into a fire truck on the runway, killing both pilots. The Air Canada flight collided with the vehicle just before midnight Sunday as it touched down from Montreal. Officials say the fire truck had clearance to cross the runway while responding to another aircraft. Air traffic control recordings capture a last-second warning telling the truck to stop. The impact destroyed the cockpit, killed both pilots, and injured dozens on board and on the ground. Investigators are looking into how runway coordination failed. In Colombia, a military aircraft carrying more than 120 people crashed in the country's southwest. The Hercules C-130 transport plane went down just after takeoff on Monday near Puerto Leguizamo in Putumayo province. Officials say 121 people were on board, mostly soldiers. At least one person died and 77 were injured, with rescue efforts still ongoing. Authorities say the aircraft went down just 2 kilometers from the airport, but they have not confirmed the cause. Colombian pop star Shakira will perform in Madrid this September, building a custom venue for tens of thousands of fans. Organizers say the singer will stage 6 shows in September at a purpose-built site holding up to 50,000 people. The venue will be built at Madrid's Iberdrola Music Grounds on the city's outskirts and will operate under the name Macondo Park. Promoters say the project will center on Latin culture. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Spring is really settling in now. Yesterday, Seoul climbed above 20 degrees Celsius, meaning there was no need for a jacket. to go outdoors. Well, today will be slightly cooler but still mild with a high of 17 degrees Celsius here in the capital. In fact, this week will feel more like late April. Meanwhile, the air is getting drier. Dry weather alerts are being in place across many regions, including here in the capital. And with the risk of wildfires increasing, extra caution is needed. Also, air quality continues to be a concern. With stagnant air and additional dust moving in on northeasterly winds, skies will remain quite hazy today in most parts of Korea under lots of clouds coverage. And this afternoon, highs in most parts will be in the upper teens, getting up to 17 degrees here in Seoul, Gwangju, getting up to 20 degrees Celsius. Then rain will begin late tonight on Jeju, spread to the southern coast early tomorrow morning before tapering off during the day.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.